You want to start playing drums right away, I know. This video will serve as your quick start guide. Everything you need to know to get started playing on the kit right away. We are going to get you playing on the kit, so stick around for that. But like starting anything new, you want to get off on the right foot. Bad habits can slow your progress and be a real detriment later on. So first, I'll go over the gear that you'll need, some core techniques, and some beginner exercises to get you started in the right way and avoid those bad habits. We will take a more detailed look into all of these things in later videos. But for today, here is an overview. Now listen, you could play drums with just some wooden spoons, pots and pans, and play along to your favorite Foo Fighters song. But if you want to do this right, at very least you're going to need some good sticks, a good practice pad, and a metronome. There is nothing definitive about any of this gear. What works best for you, what feels best, is what's most important. So first, let's talk about sticks and the parts of the stick that you will need to know. First, we have the tip here, which is typically wood or nylon and comes in various shapes and sizes. Next, we have the shoulder, this tapered bit here. Then the main shaft of the stick. Here we have the grip area, which can be lacquered, plain wood, or sometimes has custom grips built in. And finally, we have the butt end of the stick, which can be used for rim shots or for playing with a heavier sound. Alright, so drumstick sizes can be confusing. What do those letters and numbers mean? The main rule of thumb here is the higher the number, the lighter the stick. The lower the number, the heavier the stick. Now the letter, this is where it gets a bit confusing. Originally, these letters were used to designate the style of music and therefore the style of drumstick. Now these styles are a little bit outdated now. The most important thing is to find a drumstick that feels good in your hands. Here you can see the most common sizes. The 7A being the lightest and 2B being the heaviest stick. There are also a lot of signature sticks out there. Some of them are designed by big name drummers, some by the stick manufacturers that are based on style like rock or jazz, rather than having number and letter designations. Are you confused yet? I know I am. But seriously, here's my recommendations. For an electronic kit like this one, you want to use a lighter stick, a 5A perhaps, maybe a 7A if your hands are smaller. Maybe a 5B, that's just a little heavier stick than a 5A, but 5A or 5B is probably good for an acoustic kit. Now for practice pad, I recommend a heavier stick. There are a couple schools of thought on this, but myself, I think it helps build the muscles in your hands and wrists faster to use a heavier stick when you practice. I like to use this Vic Firth. It's a Ralph Hardiman signature stick. They're very heavy, typically used for marching. Or I sometimes use the Vader Nightstick, which is a little bit smaller but a little bit longer than these sticks. At the end of the day though, personal taste and comfort are key. I strongly recommend that you go down to your local drum shop, try out a bunch of sticks and see what feels right in your hands. Okay, next we're going to talk about practice pads. Now if you have an acoustic kit or an electronic kit, you could get by without a pad, but I think they're essential for focused practice on your hand technique, as well as giving you the ability to play when you maybe can't make a lot of noise and you need to stay quiet. Now practice pads are very simple. The key attributes are just the size of the head and the material the head is made from. Okay, first we have the mesh head style. Remo makes one that's very popular. These aren't as quiet, but they have a very drum-like feel to them. Next we have the rubber head, like this one I have here. This is made by Granite Percussion. The rubber head has a pretty good feel to it and it is quite quiet as well, so helpful in that regard. And finally, we have the foam head style, which are really good in quiet situations. but they don't have quite the same bounce as a rubber head or the mesh head. So you're gonna have to work a little harder if you play on one of those. Okay, enough said about practice pads for today. Just choose one that has the volume and the bounce that you like and the size that seems to be most appropriate for you. Okay, next we're going to talk about metronomes. Now you might be saying to yourself, why would I need a metronome? That sounds really boring. Well, it is very important because it helps you to develop an internal clock and helps make sure that you can keep very steady time. This is one of the main functions of a drummer in the band. It also helps you to recognize tempos by the number, for example, 120 beats per minute or 80 beats per minute. Now there's a lot of different types of metronomes. There's the old traditional tick, tick, tick style. There's also some electronic ones back in the day. But these days, what's most common probably is apps for your phone or tablet. There's a lot of them out there. Some of them are free. I actually prefer to use one that's called Click Metronome. It's a free app and it's got a lot of versatility. I think you'll like it. Now that we've got the gear, let's talk about core techniques, starting with how to hold your sticks. Now, grip and hand technique can be a bit of a contentious subject. There are different ways to hold the sticks, and there's certainly different terminology and names used for the different types of grips. But don't concern yourself with all of that. Most importantly, you want to grip the stick and move in such a way to maximize your body mechanics and take full advantage of the rebound of the stick. Also, we want to make sure that we're moving in a way that prevents injury, especially repetitive stress injuries. So first, you want to place the stick across the palm of your hand, like this. Then place your thumb on the side of the stick and wrap your remaining fingers around the stick. It's important that your thumb and index finger are at the fulcrum point of the stick. Now the best way to make sure you're at the fulcrum point is to try bouncing the stick like this. And you'll know you're in the right spot if you get many bounces out of one wrist movement. Holding your sticks in this way gives you a firm grip on the stick without squeezing too tight. Now let's talk about grip. There's three main types. First, we have the German grip. The motion there is very similar to like bouncing a basketball. Your palm faces down, the top of your hand facing up, and the motion comes mostly from your wrist hinge. Like this. Next is the French grip. Now the French grip is more of a twisting motion. Your hand is under the stick, your thumb is on top. The motion is more of a rotation of the wrist. Now both of these grips and movement types are valid and useful in different situations. For example, the German would be used when playing straight ahead like this, but when you're playing on cymbals and on the hi-hat, it is often advantageous to switch to more of a French grip. So it is important to practice both these grips and the transition from one to the other. Here's an example. The hybrid of these two is called American grip. Now, American grip has become probably the most popular and common grip type. One last word on grip. You may have heard of matched versus traditional. This is one of the contentious issues. Some drummers prefer to play the matched grip, which is what I just demonstrated, and some prefer to play a traditional grip, which was originally designed for marching and was adopted by early jazz players. A lot of jazz players still prefer traditional grip, but I found it somewhat limiting. I actually started playing drums with traditional grip, but 2 or 3 years in, I switched to the match grip, and I've never looked back. I much prefer the match grip. First, there's wrist technique. This relates mostly to the German grip. With this technique, the stick is held firmly and the motion comes from the wrist, which gives better control but less speed and efficiency. Like this. And then we have the finger technique. In this technique, the stick is held between the thumb and the index finger, and the remaining fingers are used to pull the stick downward like this. This is overall a looser grip with less control, but increased speed and efficiency. It goes something like this. Okay, let's look at that first exercise I showed you before, but first let's talk a little more details this time. Make sure that your pad is set up at approximately belly button level, first of all. Then make sure that your arms are hanging at your sides. You don't want your shoulders up and tense or anything, so make sure that they're loose, elbows at your side, and your sticks should be just slightly above the pad, angled slightly above the pad like this. Okay, so let's try that exercise again, where we're going to transition between German and French grip. So starting with German, we'll transition to the French grip and back again. Now, I strongly recommend that you practice this over and over and over again until you can play both styles smoothly and in a relaxed manner. A couple other tips. Remember, as we said before, hold the stick at the fulcrum. This will maximize the bounce that you get from the stick. Next, make sure that your grip is firm but not too tight. If it's too tight, your playing will be stiff and awkward. If it's too loose, you won't have any control. If it doesn't feel right at first, just keep going. Eventually you will develop the muscle memory and your playing will start to flow and be more relaxed. Most importantly, never play tense. Speed will come eventually. It's most important to focus on accuracy and playing loosely, and then the speed will come. One final word on technique. You may have heard of the Muller or whipping stroke, and also maybe the push and pull strokes. These are more advanced techniques. For now, focus on the wrist and finger movements that I've shown you, and in a later video, we'll go into more depth on those techniques. Now that we know how to hold and move the sticks, here are a few basic exercises to get you practicing and developing that muscle memory. There's a lot more to come, but here's a few to get you started. First off, stretches. There's a few different stretches you can use. I like to stretch a bit before I start to play. First of all, I like to stretch my wrists. I will grab the sticks like this in one hand, twist and then pull. Careful not to overdo it. And then do the same with this hand, stretching the wrist again. Also, another good wrist stretch is to just take the palm of your hand with these fingertips, push the fingertips back. That stretches a lot in this part of your arm here. Also push this way to stretch the other side of your arm. So we'll do that with this arm as well. We're stretching, getting a lot of pull there, and then stretch on the top of the wrist and forearm. Okay, likewise, I also like to stretch my fingers. So I will just simply use the sticks in this way, stretch each of my fingers on each of my hands. Keeping those fingers limber is just going to help with that finger technique, those finger movements. Okay, now that we've stretched, let's get into those exercises. So each one of these exercises should be practiced for several minutes, starting out very slow and gradually working up to a speed you can play without getting tense. You should also practice each one of these with the metronome. starting at a slow setting, gradually working your way up to faster speeds. It's important to use the metronome as well on these exercises. It will help you get your meter and keep your strokes even as well. So the first exercise we're going to do is the single stroke roll. Now this is a very simple exercise. It's the first thing most drummers learn. It's really just alternating hands, right stroke, left stroke, right stroke, left stroke. So we'll try that starting out very slow and then gradually picking up speed. Once you get to a certain speed that you're comfortable with, just try to maintain that. And as I said before, the speed will come eventually. Don't worry if you're not this fast. Just play as fast as you can without being tense. And then we start to slow down, and we're going to slow it right down again to the original tempo. Next up is the double stroke roll. This also is very simple. But it is the basis of so many rudiments to come. So all this requires is 2 strokes with the right, 2 strokes with the left, and back and forth. Let's try it. I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to go any faster for now. I can play faster, but we're going to slow it down back to the original tempo. Our third exercise today is the paradiddle. Now the paradiddle is 2 single strokes, so starting out right, left, and then 2 double strokes, right, right, then left paradiddle, left, right, left, left. Okay? So just remember, 2 singles, a double, 2 singles, a double, back and forth. So nice and slow. Here is the single paradiddle. Our last exercise for today is 4s. This exercise consists of 4 strokes with the right hand, 4 strokes with the left hand, and then 4 strokes with both hands together. Let's try it. Okay, so that's our 4 exercises for today. Remember to practice these for several minutes each, both in an open style, starting slow, building up speed, and then slowing back down again. Also make sure to practice these with your metronome to make sure that you're developing that internal clock. All right, so today we've gone over the gear that you'll need, some core techniques, and some exercises. Make sure you practice those exercises regularly, every day. Work on them so that you're ready to play the kit in the next week or 2. The key to success here is consistency. Practice, practice, practice every day. Now, once you're comfortable with those exercises, you're ready to start playing drums. In our next video, we're going to get you behind the kit. So let's do this.